Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on what to do when your cocoa supply dries up. Today, we'll be exploring sustainable and reliable alternatives. If you haven't seen one of our webinars before, then thank you for joining us today. I'm Martha. I lead the marketing team at Ulrick and Shaw. I'm joined today with John Ellis, who is our product manager, and Alex Batty, who is one of our technical field supports. We've recently launched a new ingredient which has been designed as a replacement to cocoa powder to overcome the current supply chain issues that we're seeing. So over the next 30 minutes, we're going to explore why the cocoa situation has exploded recently, the effect that this has had on the food industry, how to innovate for a solution, along with 3 case studies of where we've been able to replace cocoa powder. So just a couple of housekeeping points before we get into it. Please feel free to pop any questions that you have in the Q&A box on Teams. We have turned the chat function off, so pop any questions, comments, thoughts into that Q&A box and we'll get back to you. You will all be receiving a recording later on today of this webinar, so you can watch it back if you missed anything or send it to anyone that you think it's relevant for. Along with that recording, we'll also be sending out some recipes of the case studies that we'll be showing you today. We will try and keep this webinar as interactive as we can, so we will be launching a poll partway through, and there'll also be some QR codes on your screen for you to scan, so you might want to have your phones at the ready, and please do get involved. So let's get into the webinar. So the price of cocoa has surged to record highs. We saw this beginning to rise back in 2023, and by April 2024, the price had skyrocketed to around $12 per kilogram, and that's equivalent to around 8 to 9 British pounds. Prior to this, when levels were stable, the price was around $4 per kilogram. So that's a 300% increase that we've seen on the price. In the last 12 months, the prices have shown no sign of decline, and you can see on the graph here that there are a lot of fluctuations over the last year, and prices are still hovering around $8 per kilogram. So that's double what it was back in 2023. So what's caused this increase? Well, there's 3 main factors that we've identified that have caused this. The first one is climate disruption. And what we've seen is the 2023-2024 harvest became severely impacted by shifting weather patterns, rising temperatures, and extreme climate events. And that was all due to the impact of climate change. Around 60% of global cocoa supply comes from West Africa. And this saw El Nino weather spells, meaning that they had the worst harvest in around 15 years. The second reason for the impact on price is due to structural weaknesses from the cocoa trees. They are aging trees, meaning that they are more vulnerable to diseases. The unseasonal heavy rainfall that we saw across the Ivory Coast and Ghana made this the ideal conditions for black pod disease to spread quite aggressively. And that meant that around 30 to 50% of cocoa pods became infected, and some farms lost their entire harvest. The lack of infrastructure in these cocoa farms also meant that farmers lacked the proper training or financial means to control and prevent the spread of the diseases. Thirdly, to add pressure to an already tight situation, in December 2024, the EU deforestation regulations came into force. This is a major new law, and it affects how commodities like cocoa, soy, coffee, palm oil can be sold into the EU market. The aim was to prevent products in the EU market that are linked to deforestation or illegal land use. So now goods must be from deforestation-free areas and must comply with all local environmental and social laws in the country of origin. Companies must now have to provide precise geolocation data for every plot of land that's been used where the commodity was produced. So this is adding extra pressure to the cocoa situation, as around 90% of cocoa farms are run by smallholders. So this means that sometimes it can be difficult to prove traceability or deforestation-free practices. So what's the knock-on effect of this, and how is this impacting brands, categories, and consumers? Well, the most immediate effect that we've seen is, of course, that sharp increase in the raw material cost, which, as mentioned on a couple slides ago, this has doubled over the last couple of years. Manufacturers are seeing now significantly higher input costs, which is impacting retail pricing and procurement planning. This has had the biggest impact in the bakery and confectionery categories, as around 2/3 of product launches that use cocoa as an ingredient are within these categories. We're even seeing some of the big players feeling the heat of this. For example, Mondelez reported a 10% dip in share prices, and they are directly linking this to the cost of cocoa. So in response, some strategies to overcome this include the reduction of pack sizes, reformulation of recipes, and also the premiumization of cocoa products. So I'd like to launch our poll now. And this is to ask you whether you are currently seeing any challenges yet with your cocoa supply. This is a multiple choice poll, so you can select yes, you're actively looking for alternatives. Yes, but you're not sure where to start with an alternative solution. Not yet, but you do anticipate challenges soon. Or no, your cocoa supply is currently stable. So if you just select which answer you think is most relevant to your situation, and press done when you've selected your answer. I'll just give a couple more seconds for some final answers to come in. So what I can see here is that around 60% of you say that yes, you are currently facing challenges and you're actively looking for alternatives. So hopefully throughout the rest of the webinar, we'll be able to provide a solution for you. So I think the real urgency of this challenge becomes even clearer when we connect this back to customer expectations. Customers place importance on affordability, naturalness claims, and buying chocolate as a treat or a reward. So brands must really deliver on indulgence whilst also being cost smart and staying clean label to align with these consumer demands. However, the cocoa crisis isn't going away anytime soon, as it can take around 5 to 7 years for new cocoa trees to become fully productive again. So even if replanting began today, we wouldn't see any meaningful recovery until the end of the decade. This is really a medium to long-term risk for manufacturers. So we must look at reformulating and innovating to reduce our reliance on cocoa. But it doesn't mean to cut cocoa out completely, as it's quite clear throughout the challenge that the cocoa market needs investment to ensure long-term sustainability of the crop. So I'm now going to hand you over to John, who's going to talk through our solution for cocoa reduction and how we've innovated to overcome this challenge.
Thanks, Martha. So hi, I'm John, and some of you recognise me from my time out on the road with customers, where I spent over a decade as part of the sales team at Ulrick & Short. I'm now product manager, where I act as a source of product knowledge to our sales team and customers, and assist with bringing on new products from concept to launch, such as fazenda Gallio. So if you haven't heard of Ulrick & Short or don't know what we do, we are designers and suppliers of clean label, plant-based, functional food ingredients. We design and develop our ingredients with manufacturing partners across the world, and these are then processed using clean label technologies and delivered to customers with technical expertise. So in practice, what that means is that we're able to support you with an appropriate level of support. This could be documentation, which could be emailed over, a telephone call with one of our technologists, or a visit from one of our field support team who are happy to work with you at kitchen concept stage right through to the full factory scale up and through into launch. So having understood the challenges in the cocoa market and knowing our customers would start to see some of these challenges over time, seemed like a good idea to develop a cocoa replacer. Ulrick in short has a long history of developing clever solutions to industry problems, and fazenda Gallio, our cocoa replacer, follows the format of some of our other ingredients such as overprox, which replaces egg in cake, Avanti, which replaces sugar in cakes and sauces, and Delight, which replaces fat in a range of food products. So when it comes to replacing cocoa, what are the options? Apart from reducing and removing cocoa altogether, there are a number of solutions on the market. They are generally based around cereals and grains, pulses and legumes, particularly carob, and some biological action such as fermentation. There are also artificial solutions where cocoa is simulated in a laboratory. Each of these solutions have their own pros and cons. You'll see some of these technologies in fazenda Gallio. So we started by looking at what a cocoa powder was bringing to a cake, which is a dark brown colour and a rich chocolate flavour. We looked at a number of ingredients but settled on two technologies to use as raw materials, carob powder and malt. So what is fazenda Gallio? It's declared as malted barley flour, carob powder and malted barley extract, and is a blend of ingredients which is designed to replace cocoa powder in cakes, frostings, cookies and other bakery products. It's designed to reduce reliance on cocoa powder in an unstable market, typically replacing up to 50% and giving a cost-effective solution. Let's have a look at these two raw materials in more detail. So carob is an evergreen tree and from the legume family. It grows around the Mediterranean and Middle East, particularly Portugal, Italy and Morocco. It is cultivated for its edible fruit, which are seed pods, much like peas and beans, and are used for both human and animal feed. Carob is often further processed to produce locust bean gum, also known as carob gum, but in our case it is dried and used whole for its natural chocolatey flavour. Malt is most commonly used in the brewing process. It is the process whereby a grain is allowed to start to grow, causing enzymes in the grain to start to convert the starch into sugar. At the desired point, the malt is heated to stop the enzymes from converting more starch to sugar, and during this process, some caramelization can occur, as well as flavour development. And this is controlled from a light brown, so think lager or pale ale, through to a dark, almost black colour, think porter or stout. Barley is the most common grain for malting, but other grains such as rye, wheat, rice and maize can also be malted. Once the malt has been produced, it can be milled into a flour for use in food products, or it can be made into a malt extract by following the brewing process to make a mash of wort and then driving off the water. Malt extract can be produced as either liquid malt extract, which is a really thick, sticky black paste, or dry malt extract, which is a fully dried powder. Fazenda Gallio uses both malt flour and malt extract. So using these two exciting ingredients, we're able to create a product which can replace the colour and flavour of cocoa powder. However, cocoa powder is not just one specific specification of product. There's a whole range of colours and flavours produced through various manufacturing methods. By using a wide range of specifications of carob and malt extract as raw materials, we're able to adjust the properties of our cocoa replacer and look at some new solutions right now, which we'll be excited to launch shortly. What was also important to us wasn't just the functionality, but ensuring the solution was reliable and sustainable. We are working with Clamato to implement scientifically proven, data-backed carbon ratings to understand the climate impact of our ingredients. The method of calculating the carbon footprint is called a life cycle assessment, which assesses the greenhouse gas emissions emitted by a product during each stage of a food's life cycle, looking at greenhouse gas emissions arising from all the inputs that occur, like fertiliser and fuel. Fazenda Gallio has a significant sustainability advantage, with its carbon emissions being only 2.4 kilos of CO2 per kilo of Fazenda Gallio, compared to 14.4 kilo of CO2 per kilo of cocoa powder. This is an 83% reduction in CO2 compared to standard cocoa powder, which is the equivalent of charging your phone over 2,400 times for every kilo used. So I'll pass you on to Alex now, who'll talk you through some applications using Fazenda Gallio to reduce your reliance on cocoa powder.
Thanks, John. So hi everyone, and I am Alex and I'm part of the sales team as technical field support. So part of my role includes helping customers with any problems, helping provide solutions, helping with reformulating recipes, whether that's over the phone or email, or in person in the development kitchen, or even in trials and production. So as Martha mentioned, there are going to be some QR codes at the bottom of the slides for you to scan and get the recipes on your phone if you want them. So let's have a look at some applications in which we've used Fazenda Gallio and some other functional ingredients from our portfolio to develop some delicious cocoa reduced applications. So first up, we have muffins and frosting. The cocoa powder has been reduced by 30% in both the muffin batter and in the chocolate frosting. So we have simply just reduced the cocoa powder by 30% and added this exact weight onto the Fazenda Gallio, taking the cocoa powder from 4.7 to 3.29% in the batter and 4.8 to 3.36% in the frosting, and adding the percentage taken off onto the Fazenda Gallio. It really is that simple to reduce the cocoa powder and still achieve a high quality chocolate product. So we've also used an ingredient called Synergy XS in the muffin batter. This is a maize starch and has been used in the recipe to help with depositing and to help with increasing the moisture in the muffins over shelf life. In this particular recipe, we've only reduced the cocoa powder by 30%. However, if desired or required, we recommend up to 50% cocoa reduction. As previously mentioned, it is simply just a one-for-one replacement, making it a very easy swap in your recipe. No complicated calculations are needed. From reducing the cocoa powder in both the muffin batter and in the frosting, we have achieved a 9% reduction in carbon dioxide rating compared to a standard muffin with 100% cocoa powder. So next up, we have a brownie recipe. And in this recipe, the cocoa powder has been reduced by 50% compared to a standard brownie recipe. So we've called this the sustainable brownie, as we have managed to achieve a huge 35% reduction in carbon emissions compared to a standard brownie recipe. To achieve this carbon reduction, we have also used many other ingredients from our portfolio. We've included a recently new ingredient for us, which sits under our range Vettura, called Vettura AU. This is declared as linseed flour and tapioca starch and was developed as a multifunctional alternative to gums and hydrocolloids. It is sustainably sourced and has a reliable supply, which means it's got minimal impact on the environment. Some of the things it can help with are viscosity, volume, and emulsification. In this particular recipe, it has been used in conjunction with an ingredient called Cilia BF90, which is a bamboo fibre to help with fat reduction. The recipe also includes Cilia BF200, which is also a bamboo fibre, and this has been used to increase the fibre content and for its water holding capacity. And finally, we have used Synergy L626 PGA, which is a potato starch. This starch is a pre-gelatinized starch and has a coarser granule, which means that it allows for easier dispersion in the batter. This starch has been used to provide viscosity to keep suspension in the batter, which allows for even distribution of the chocolate chips and also helps with depositing. From adding the bamboo fibre in the recipe, we've also been able to make a source of fibre claim, as well as the reduction in carbon emissions. There we go. And lastly, we have a chocolate mousse. So the chocolate mousse has been cocoa reduced by 30%, taking the percentage cocoa powder from 4% to 2.8% and adding in 1.2% of fazenda Gallio. So we have also used Delight 5 in this recipe, which is from our fat replacement range and can also be used to enhance texture. Delight 5 is a tapioca starch and adds indulgence to products by providing a creamy and smooth mouthfeel, replicating the functionality and properties of fat. The chocolate mousse recipe we have created also carries with it a high protein claim. So as you can see from all of the applications we've looked at today, fazenda Gallio is a very versatile product. You can use it in bakery, icings and frostings, desserts, sports nutrition, and performance food. And as John mentioned earlier, the fazenda Gallio replicates the same colour and flavour as cocoa powder, making it a very easy and simple way to reduce and replace cocoa powder in your recipes. So from the webinar today, if you'd like any support with cocoa replacement or have any other challenges, please do get in touch, as we would be more than happy to help and come and work with you. So I'll now pass you back over to Martha. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, John, for providing those insights on fazenda Gallio and how to replace cocoa powder. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you've enjoyed this webinar and you've learned something new. If you do have any further questions or comments, or would like to receive any samples of fazenda Gallio, or as Alex mentioned, would like any support in your development kitchen, then please do get in contact with us. There are some contact details on the screen now, or you can pop any final questions and comments into that Q&A box on Teams that I mentioned at the beginning. You will all be receiving a recording a little bit later on today of this webinar, so feel free to share it around anyone that you think it's relevant for, or you can also reply to that email with any questions that you might have at a later date. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next webinar.